Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the honourable member could have simply said no. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to be splitting my time with my honourable colleague, the member from Windsor-Tecumseh. Mr. Speaker, I am privileged and proud to stand in this House to support this incredibly important motion from my honourable colleague from Edmonton-Wetaskiwin on a number of fronts, both professionally, because I'm the health critic for the New Democratic Party, and I have, I think, acquired some understanding of both autism spectrum disorder and the needs of people and their families across this country who are touched by it, but also as a father of a child who has a different kind of global developmental delay. It's not autism, but it's similar. But through her experiences and being the parent of a special needs child, I have been exposed to the wonderful world of developmentally challenged children, teenagers, and adults. And I have been fortunate enough to meet these fabulous, wonderful Canadians who are touched by a number of different afflictions, including autism spectrum disorder. Some have Down syndrome. Some have different forms of developmental delays. Some have Tourette syndrome. Some have anxiety disorders. Some have cognitive impediments. But I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that I have never met Canadians who are more generous, who are kinder, who are more cooperative, who enjoy life, who love their families, who participate with a gusto in our communities in every facet, who contribute to Canada in profoundly important ways. And I can count myself privileged to be friends with people with autism spectrum disorder of many ages. And the first point I want to make is that this is not a disability. Autism spectrum disorder is a health challenge, but it is something that we can, with an investment of resources and funds, make a significant difference in their lives, no different than we do for many Canadians who are afflicted with any number of different health conditions. I want to review a couple of facts, Mr. Speaker, that puts this motion into perspective. We know that 1 in 68 children are currently diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. We know that the prevalence of ASD has increased over 100% in the last 10 years. We know that autism is the fastest growing and most commonly diagnosed neurological disorder in Canada. We're not sure how it's caused, but we believe it's linked to a number of genetic and environmental influences. We also know that autism is an equal opportunity condition. It occurs in all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups. We know that autism is a lifelong spectrum disorder. We know that early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Mr. Speaker, we know that mental health concerns such as anxiety and depression are common in individuals with ASD. We know that as adults, the unemployment rate for individuals with ASD is a shocking 80%. But we also know that with the right supports, all individuals with ASD can thrive and they can meet their potential. Now, this is not necessarily cheap. We know that treatments for those on the autism spectrum can cost between $50,000 and $100,000 per year. We also know that early intervention is critical and that parents with a child that's born with autism spectrum disorder need to have a very, very quick diagnosis, and they need access to every kind of modality and treatment that exists. And we know that that makes a tremendous difference in those people's lives. We know that ASD is a family condition, that the mums and the dads and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles and relatives are all touched in some way by autism. And we know that, depending on their place of residence, not all affected Canadians have access to the same quality of care. We know that provincial health plans do not provide equal levels of coverage, And we know that wait lists across this country are far too long for just about every family with a member suffering from ASD. Now, we know that there has been some progress over the last few years, and in November 2016, the Canadian Autism Advisory Group presented a final report to the Health Minister, and that contained a proposed business plan for a Canadian Autism Partnership, and a request for $19 million over 5 years was put forth, which I think is the genesis of the motion before this House today. However, unfortunately, the Liberal government decided against funding this partnership model, and in response, advocates have taken to social media to flood the minister and the Liberal government with over 3,000 tweets and calling for full funding for this partnership. Now, what we need, Mr. Speaker, and I think what this motion calls for, is the development and implementation of a plan that represents a comprehensive approach that would address both systemic issues and the complex needs of individuals on the autism spectrum. This plan would create opportunities for many autistic individuals, along with their families and caregivers, to benefit from the efforts of decision makers to enhance coordinated and timely support. We need to reduce the frustration and isolation that often accompanies their search for appropriate and effective intervention and care. So the nub of the motion before us and the $19 million that it calls for would create many efficiencies. The plan would create a national platform for multi-sectoral collaboration and innovation to drive systemic change. It would foster focused, robust, and accessible knowledge translation and exchange, promoting greater efficiency of effort and resources. It would provide an authoritative access point for reliable data to inform policy development, funding decisions, and service delivery. It would increase collaboration between all segments of the autism sector, promoting broader influence on the research agenda in Canada, and acceleration of the time from research to implementation. It would initiate a unique Indigenous engagement strategy that reflects the cultural values of Canada's Indigenous communities and address their specific needs. It would build the capacity of northern and remote communities by providing a hub for shared information, policy and research and collaboration with more well-resourced parts of the country. It would forge effective partnerships to enable pooling of resources, and it would achieve greater equity across all provinces and territories. Mr. Speaker, this motion before us is something that every member of this House should proudly stand in their place and support. Now, I know that we're always calling for a government to spend more money, but I think the honourable member from Edmonton-Wetaskiwin put it very well the other day when he said we're talking about 10 cents per Canadian per year. That's how much it would cost for us to make a profound difference in thousands, maybe tens of thousands of Canadians' lives. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by talking about some very important people in my province of British Columbia. I'm fortunate to count as a friend Abby Gates and her son Lucas Gates. Now, they both have recently been hired by the Pacific Autism Family Network, and the amount of work that they've done in bringing together individuals of all ages and degrees together out of their isolation and to develop programs that are helping these people achieve their potential is unbelievable. Abby Gates is a prime mover behind creating Friday Night Friends, which is a group at the Hillcrest Community Centre where young adults with all sorts of differences come together and socialize, including many people with autism spectrum disorder. After having her daughter refused to join a typical kids soccer team, she started the Blazin' Soccer Dogs, which is a soccer league in Vancouver for children that is open to every child of every ability with every kind of challenge. Mr. Speaker, people in Canada with developmental disabilities are some of our most cherished people. They all are worthy of support, and I want to make a plug also for this House not to forget the many Canadians that have some form of global developmental delay or developmental delay, and not forget that these people need the resources and funding that they need as well. And we can start by voting for this motion and starting to devote more resources in this country to helping Canadians reach their potential, and let's shift money to making sure every Canadian can be as healthy as they can be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments?